really nice because my computer is taking forever to load up. So, good morning, Coffee Chats. I am going to talk today specifically about people that are coming to work for the federal government or that are already working for the federal government. And I want to share a way that you might be able to retire sooner than you thought you would be able to. Plus, you would be able to add more money to your retirement than you may think walking through the door. And the way to do both of those things, add time and money, is if you're coming to work as a federal employee, making a military deposit. Sometimes we call this doing a buyback. That just means that you're paying some money to buy back your military time. You're depositing that into your civilian retirement account. Now, the beauty of this is that if I make a military deposit, I do get to retire sooner than I would normally be able to, but also I'm adding money to my retirement check because our retirement, good morning, Paul. Our retirement from the federal government is based upon a 3-line math problem. We're going to take our creditable service, that's how long we've been working, plus any of this military time that we've deposited, plus the sick leave that we have on the books the day that we retire, all three of those added together, times our high 3 average salary, simplistically, any consecutive 3 years when we were making the most money. It does have to be a block. It does not have to be the last 3 years, though, and a lot of people wrongly believe that that's true. It's any 3 years. Credible service times the high 3 times a formula. The formula depends on how old we are when we retire and also how much of that creditable service time that we have when we retire. And I'm not going to get into all of that today, but those 3 things multiplied together equal my pension. So if I make a military deposit, let's say that I was in the military for 12 years, and I come in as a federal civilian, and I make a military deposit for that 12 years, then I have 12 extra years in the top line of my math problem, and the minimum formula is 1%. So I just added 12% to my retirement times my high 3 for the rest of my life. Now, you will generally make back the amount that you have to pay to make a military deposit very, very quickly. So I'm going to talk about how much it is in just a second. First, because military deposits or military service in general, right? It's not one thing. We all have different things going on. So number one question would be, did the person retire from active duty? And I can see that there are a couple people watching. If you are watching and you did retire from active duty, just pop in the comments and let me know. Active duty retired. Second question, did you or do you plan to retire from a reserve component? And if so, please, again, hop in the reserves, or I plan to retire from the reserves, whatever that is for you. The third question, did you serve in the United States military but not stay long enough to retire? And if so, pop in the comments, let me know, okay? So I should be seeing if you retired from active duty, if you retired from a reserve component, or if you didn't retire, but you were in the military at some point. And I'm just going to wait for a minute to see if anybody's hopping in the chat. Perfect, Nicole. So I served both active and reserve, and I know that you did not retire, so that's awesome. I also know at this time block, like 9 o'clock in the morning Central, I have some of my West Coast friends that are watching this on the replay. So if you're not watching live, but you catch it later, again, just hop in there. Let me know what you have going on. The reason that I have to ask those questions is because they result in 3 completely different answers, okay? Number one, I'm going to say this, and this is across the board. And then I'll get into why did I ask those questions. If I want to get credit for my military time, then I have to make this military deposit, right? Nothing's free, ever. So if I was in the military, no matter what it looked like, and I want it to count, then I am going to have to. Perfect, awesome. McCabe retired from active Army. If I want to have that time count, I do have to pay for it. Now, how much is it going to cost me? And it will depend on which retirement system I'm under. Again, everything's so complicated, right, in the government. But generally, 20 plus service. Thank you so much for that military service. I really do appreciate it. My entire family's in the military, so I mean that from the bottom of my heart. Thank you. I have to buy it back. Okay, so simplistically, let's just say that I come into the federal government from 1983 through today, through tomorrow. If I come into the federal government anytime after 1983, then my cost for buying my military time equals 3% of whatever my military base pay was. Special pay and allowances are not going to go into this. 3% of my military base pay. Now, for that reserve time, Nicole, you can buy back your active duty stuff, of course, those years that you had. For the reserve time, if you are on active duty orders, you could also buy back that reserve time, which means for the 2 weeks, yes. For the weekend drills, no. Active duty orders would be required. 3% of my military base pay. And we'll call that my principal, okay? Now, if you get a federal civil servant job and you pay that principal within the first 3 years of coming on board, that's it. School training orders, yes. That's it, that 3%, okay? However, I have this grace period of 3 years to pay it off. Now, if I come in and I don't pay it off within that first 3 years, then they start adding interest on top of my principal. That interest rate is variable and it compounds annually. That means the longer I wait to make a military deposit, the more expensive it's going to be. Good news, interest rates have been super low for a while, so even though it's going up because I couldn't afford to pay it off, it's only going up by a little bit. Okay. So that part, what I just said, is standard for everybody. Now, if I retired from active duty, then for me to get credit on the civilian side for my military time, I would have to do two things. I would have to pay that money. And then I would also have to waive my military retirement check. Now, most people will find that they're going to be further ahead financially by just getting that check from the Army and then also doing my 5 or more years as a federal civilian, getting a separate check from civil service. People do that all the time, right? And that's absolutely allowed. That's usually the best case scenario. But not always. Not always. I was teaching at Fort Shafter several months ago, and I had a gentleman in my class who retired from the Army quite a long time ago. He was a lower enlisted member when he left the Army, so his retirement check is not really big, and now he's working for the federal government as a GS-14. Now, he will not have to waive that military retirement check until 2 months before he leaves his civilian job. So even if he makes his military deposit today, he keeps getting a pension from the Army until 2 months before he plans to leave his civilian job, and then he'll go, okay, thanks, I don't want that anymore. Bring that 20 years over here to my high 3 as a GS-14. That guy will make his money back in less than a year and a half when I ran his numbers. So in that case, it's going to be a really good deal for him. A lot of our active duty retirees just assume that it's not going to work out. I hate to make assumptions. I want everybody to run their own numbers to know for sure. And here's the thing, okay? Not only does he not have to waive anything as long as he's working, but even when he does waive his retirement, that's all he's waiving. He doesn't have to give up his TRICARE. He doesn't have to give up his base privileges. If he's receiving money from the VA, he doesn't have to give up his VA either. He's just waiving that military pension. Now, there is an exception for our military retirees, and that's if they had a period of service that was not included in their military retirement, they could buy it back and not have to give anything up. Example, if I do 4 years at one of the service academies, because academy time is not included in the military retirement, I can buy it and have it count on the civilian side. I don't have to give anything up. Now, if I was in the military, I did stay for 20 years, but I ended up retiring under reserves versus retiring active duty, then I do not have to waive my military retirement. As a reservist, I could get my military retirement normally at 60, sometimes a little sooner depending on deployment. I was paying extra into Social Security, which gets me extra at 62 from that program, and I can make this military deposit as a federal civilian and also have that time count towards my civilian retirement. That is a great and wonderful thing, and I don't have to give up anything. Now, if I served, but I didn't stay long enough to earn entitlement to a retirement, then obviously there's nothing to wonder about me giving up, right? I'm not entitled to anything. The question is just, should I make the military deposit or not? The answer is always yes, 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 yes. The only people that ever have to stop and think about it are the people that retired from active duty. A lot of times it's not going to be beneficial for you to give that military pension up. Sometimes it is. But otherwise, it's always a good idea because of that time, right? I do the 12 years. Now I get to retire from my civilian job 12 years earlier. And I add years to that creditable length of service line. Minimum formula 1%. If I bought back 12 years, 12% in my retirement for the rest of my life. So before I hopped on the stream, I did post a picture of an example. And I will post that in the comment section here too, so you don't have to go back and dig around. But I wanted to give you some factual numbers so you can see why I do get so excited about this. The example says that I have an individual who completed 10 years of active duty between 1982 and 1992, attaining the rank of 03, earning $284,200.80 in military base pay over that period of time. This individual, if they make a military deposit, will pay 3% of that military base pay, which is only $8,526.02. Now, again, if they pay it in 3 years, cool, we're good. If they don't, we add on interest. So in my example, I said, the person came in 1991. They didn't pay it off in 3 years. They've got some interest adding on there, bringing their total up from $85.26 to $24,654. That's the cost of waiting. But if they pay the $24,654, what are they going to get? They're going to get an additional 10% because they had 10 years at 1% per year times their high 3. And I said their high 3 is $70,000. So that's going to increase their retirement by $584 a month. So for people to figure out whether this is something good for them to do or not, we have to look at the total cost and divide it by their potential benefit. If I had to pay $24,654 in order to get $584 a month, then dividing my cost by my benefit means once I retire, for just a little bit more than 3.5 years, I have already recouped the full amount of my military deposit, and I'm getting an extra $584 a month every month for the rest of my life. You're not going to find too many investments out there that will give you a guaranteed rate of return the way making a military deposit will. Now, if I'm somebody like McCabe, who retired from active duty, okay, I have to go one step further because I have to say, if I buy back my 20 years of Army time and I add 20 years to my high 3 as a federal civilian, my retirement's going to be this, right? It's going up by 20 years, but now all I'm getting is that retirement check. I had to give up my military pension. So the other math problem that a military retiree would have to do is, if I don't pay for the 20 years, now my FERS is only this, but now I also get a military retirement check. So the two together are what? The one by itself is what? Is this something that you want to contemplate doing or not? I'll tell you, this is the one bit of information that I really, really, really wish that all new employees would get when they first come on board. And unfortunately, that's not always the case. Back in the day when I started in human resources, I'll call it old school, because we actually met with people. We would hire new employees and we would sit down with them for 3 or 4, sometimes 5 days, go over all of their benefits and their insurances and help them with these decisions. And we would always tell them about the benefit of making a military deposit. Now people are electronically in processing. Now people are hearing rumors and myths. There's a whole bunch of bad information out there. People are trying to be nice, people are trying to help, but they don't understand that the rules are different if I retired active or retired reserve or didn't retire. So things just get really mixed up and messed up. So I do try as hard as I can to make sure that all the new employees that I talk to definitely know about making that military deposit, especially within that first 3 years, so they don't have any interest added in there. Nicole, are there spouse benefits with the federal retirement like the military? Yes, and quite similar to the military, actually. Under the military retirement, the maximum that I could leave to a spouse is 55% of whatever my pension is. Under FERS, which is the system from 1983 through today, the maximum that I can leave my spouse is 50%. It's 55 for the military, it's 50 for civilian. I do have to pay for it on either of these pensions. It's like an insurance. So my cost would be 10% of my retirement to leave 50% of my retirement. McCabe, I was 37 when I retired and 37 when I started my federal career. I'll have 10 years of civil service in November. Okay, so that's awesome. And as far as eligibility goes, you are eligible or vested, right? Vested once you have 5 years of civil service. So, however, once you have 5 years of civil service and you also have to be 62, you'd be eligible to retire. If you, and I don't know financially if it would make sense for you or not, we'd have to look at your numbers, but if you did buy back that 20 years of military time, now with your 10 years as a civil servant, you have 30 years in, and with 30 years, people are eligible to retire under FERS between the age of 55 and 57. So otherwise it would be 62. If you made your military deposit, you could go sooner than that. Again, that's what I mean by time and money. I'm so glad that you found it helpful, really, really. And here's the thing. Asking how much it would cost to make a military deposit is just that. It's just a question. It's a request for information. At no point would you ever have to do anything unless you wanted to. And you have until 2 months before you leave your civilian job to actually, no kidding, make the decision. So it may be worth checking out. In the comments, I'll type the form numbers that you would have to complete and then submit to your agency so you can find out how much that would cost you, and you can start doing your math problems and see what you think. Nicole, you good on the 10% cost to leave the 50% benefit? Yes, perfect. Okay. There I am, right at my 20 minutes. I know that I talk fast sometimes, but I really want these things to be beneficial to you, and I try to get in as much good information as I can within that very limited time frame. Great, Nicole. That's awesome. I will be back here tomorrow morning. Tomorrow we're going to talk about how much money you need to retire so that you can be making a plan for yourself and actually start looking forward to what that next chapter will look like. Awesome, Woody. I see that. Perfect. So the cost is exactly the same then as it was from the civilian side. The benefit is 5% higher. Awesome. Awesome. Okay, guys, if you have any questions, pop them in the comments for me. I'm going to leave those 2 things that I promised you that I was. If you watch it on the replay, let me know that you were here. I'll see you tomorrow. Take care.